a few companies that have respect just oozing from their brand. Think Shure, just pro audio through and through. Rode is another one. They're the agitator, the innovator, again, through and through. And then there's Beyerdynamic, a beast of a company known for their innovation over the past 100 plus years. One of the pioneers in audio, in fact. And an interesting note, their first products were cinema loudspeakers, way back in the day. But as radio became more and more commonplace, they refocused their energies. And one of their first forays beyond loudspeakers were the DT48s in 1937. Headphones that became the standard for sound engineers as well as reporters. A brand that lasted all the way up until 2012. Well, just a couple weeks ago, they released the DT275 Pro, kind of the modern day version of the DT48s. So let's check them out. By the way, if you're curious about a history of Beyerdynamic, let me know down below. They do have a very rich history, and it's also fascinating, especially how they had to rebuild after World War II, leaving Berlin to start anew. I do enjoy doing those videos, especially if there's interests. Anyways, what are these? And why are they so bloody cute? That's the question. Well, these are on-ear headphones, not over-ear, and they're meant for monitoring. Whether it be field recording, DJs, or even someone manning a board for a podcast. These are there to let somebody comfortably monitor the sound and are well equipped to do so in louder environments. So, let's see how they're built. Now, these things are ridiculously light, weighing in at only 95 grams. That said, most of their lineup is amazingly light, so this shouldn't be a shocker. Now, with that in mind, the predominant material used is plastic, with the band being adjusted with a metal slider. Now, one of the first things that stands out to me is the fact that the headphones seem to be user-friendly for repair. Now, I am of course referring to the headband replacement, and yes, a couple screws and you can do that at home. Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't a new thing that they're trailblazing in the headphone market. But they do deserve a nod, including this in some of their lower-priced headphones. Not all companies do that. As for the rest of the build, well, the cups are like a faux leather intended to create a seal on your ear, and I can confirm they do that quite well. And the grills over the driver are good and firm and even marked so you can tell which way to put them on. Now, there is something you might notice here, though. Where is the wire? Well, if you pull the drivers down, you're going to see it routed through the clip, meaning you're less likely to get that caught on something out in the field. And that's actually kind of a nice touch. Now, on the inside, they use a 45mm driver. We're going to be talking about that tuning in just a bit. Also, these headphones have an impedance of 45 ohms, so literally anything can drive these. Now, combining comfort and practical use can be difficult for a headphone manufacturer, but these things do tend to walk that fine line quite well. They're as light as possible, so you don't really feel these. However, that clamping pressure, which is necessary, is just on the border of being uncomfortable. Now, keep in mind, I actually have a comically large head, so unless you can outgirth my noggin, you're going to be just fine. However, if you use any glasses with chunky frames, kind of like I do, this can cause discomfort over time. There are workarounds if you're stuck in long recording sessions, kind of like this. Also, the cable is fantastic as it plugs in either side. So if having it in your left side is interfering with your operation of recording, it's no big deal. I love this, and I hope more headphones start to come with this option. As for sweat, and yes, this is an issue if you're wearing headphones for hours at a time. These things are specifically meant to let sweat just roll off. That's one of the benefits to that faux leather being just that. But this is also the reason most professionals shrink away in disgust if you ask to borrow their headphones. Just so you know. Now let's talk about the performance. If you've ever used any of the Beyerdynamic headphones, you kind of know what you're getting into when it comes to tuning. It's got a controlled low end, flattish mids, and some boosted highs. Now, those boosted highs are meant for voice articulation and helping the person monitoring to stay tuned to that voice. Now, of course, if you're doing any targeted frequency-specific mixing or editing, you should be using a headphone EQ app like what Sonar offers, or you're just going to have to learn how to adapt to the curve of the headphones. Now, how Beyerdynamic defines their tuning is, and I quote, "It focuses on clear speech and signal assessment, literally meant for somebody monitoring the signal for bad sounds." But I can say, as a fan of using the DT770 Pro for my podcast editing, if you're used to the Beyerdynamic sound, these will not disappoint. But remember, if you're mixing with them, don't get fooled by those boosted highs, so make sure you use a couple different references so you don't over EQ, like a good set of reference monitors. As for the cable, this thing is fantastic. No cable rub if it happens beyond this little coil, and that is a big deal. There's nothing worse than having cable rub convince you of some noise that actually isn't there. Not to mention the 90-degree plug, which only makes sense for monitoring workflows, and I kind of wish we saw more of this. Even as an option on headphones, it would be nice. I actually really like these, and I am kind of a fan of the Beyerdynamic lineup already. One thing I have been wanting, though, is a pair of headphones I can travel with, and I think these might be fitting the bill for my trips to NAB. They fold down nicely and flat, and they take up less room in the bag. Now, would I recommend these as your day-to-day? I mean, sure, though I think you will find yourself better suited with over-the-ear headphones like the DT770 Pro X if you're sitting at a computer all day, especially since you can get that 80-ohm version. But if you're doing a lot of monitoring, well, maybe you need something comfortable that seals the ear and sounds good when you're on location, these are going to be a great go-to for you. I'm going to have some links down below if you want to support the channel, by the way. So cheers, guys, and thanks for watching.